Last episode, we created a choice system, and using that, we can create dynamic stories influenced by the choices that the player makes. When making a dynamic story, you have a few ways of doing it. Now, for this series, we'll discuss three methods only. You have multipath, condition-based, and hybrid storylines. Let's start with a multipath. As the name implies, it's a story that doesn't follow a static path, but one that can be manipulated to tell one of many different tales along different paths. Let's examine a chart of this. It starts like any story, with a beginning and an initial set flow, but then we're given something to mix it up, such as a choice. This choice creates story branches that lead to different scenarios in the story, and to further choices that repeat the process and create unique paths for the player to experience. This goes on and on until each branch terminates or joins another branch. As you can see, a multipath story can get quite complicated and easy to lose track of if you don't have a good flowchart and naming convention for each of your branches. However, it does create more dynamic and immersive stories the more branches you create. This is the type of approach that'll take a lot of time and effort to get everything just right, but once you do, it'll probably be worth it all in the end, honestly. On the other hand, we have a condition-based story. And yes, the multipath is condition-based as well, but this method is much more simplistic, using simple cause and effect that adds to the story but never creates unique paths. This is actually the approach that's used in nearly every visual novel out there. This method keeps the same flow of the story, the same events, same beginning and end no matter what happens, but along the way it adds a few things in based off of the choices that were made by the player. These additions are often just small pieces of dialogue that occur when a certain choice is made, but sometimes the additions are full scenes, and these scenes can offer greater character empathy and connection, but no matter what happens, the storyline doesn't change. And looking at this chart, we have conditions in Chapter 2, 3, and the end of the file. In Chapter 2, if a save variable is equal to a predefined amount, then we will execute a certain bit of code to add events in the story. This doesn't change the flow, as regardless, we still move to Chapter 3 afterwards. The same type of condition is used to add dynamic elements inside of Chapter 3 that can be used locally or even globally through other conditions in the story by saving and loading these variables into a special file. And at the end of the story, a character may say something depending on a certain choice that a player made previously in the story. When done right, these additions can be very effective in the experience someone has playing your VN, and that, folks, is what it's all about. Now next we have a hybrid story, and it's a combination of both, using many different paths as well as variable conditions to add unique twists to the exact same paths depending on what choices were made in the branches that led up to them. So in the last episode, we made a type of dynamic story using code in one of our testing scripts. It worked perfectly, but now it's time to make choices available directly from within our chapter files, so we don't have to use specific code for every choice in our novel. Go ahead and disable every testing script in the scene, because we don't want any interferences. And within your novel controller, make sure that you have a chapter file set to load on start. So let's recap how the chapter files work. A chapter file consists of lines. Each line holds a speaker and their dialogue, as well as events, or a line may consist of events only or dialogue but no events. Regardless, it's made up of lines that are fed into the novel controller and handled individually. These lines are then interpreted by the novel controller and displayed on the screen for us to view. So if lines accept actions inside or at the end of dialogue, we could just make a choice command, append it to the end of the line, give it our choice title, give it our choice options, and we'd be good to go, right? Technically we could, and we could make that work, but I'm going to be honest and say that it would just be way too ugly for me to keep it like that. And it might be a little difficult to read as well, maybe even difficult to remember the format. So instead of making a choice as a command format, we're going to make it in a menu format. Using this format, we'll begin the line with the word choice to signify that this is not a normal line, but the beginning of a choice that's going to have its own data. And inside of quotation marks, as we would do with dialogue, we'll define the header for our choice menu. Then we'll create an encapsulator for all of the data belonging to this choice using squiggly brackets. So anything on any line, as long as it's within these brackets, will be related to the choice. Inside we'll have choice options. For readability, I'm just going to make each option indented with the tab key. Now that on its own will create a choice menu. But we need to associate actions with each choice so we can assign different events for each choice given. For simplicity's sake, each choice will only support one line unless you want to program it to support more. By all means, you can do that, but the best use of this one-line limitation is to load an entire chapter file. As a chapter file contains numerous dialogue and events, we can execute tons of unique events per choice, and even branch off into different parts of the story, making use of that multipath storyline approach. I've also decided to have my choices in quotes, just so they match the choice title format above. If you don't want to branch off to another chapter, but still want to use more than one line per choice, then you'll have to code that capability out separately. So instead of loading a chapter, right now I just want Avira to respond with a few additional pieces of dialogue unique to my response. I'll do this using our single line, casting Avira as the speaker, and segmenting her dialogue into multiple parts. And once she's done talking, we continue the chapter after closing the encapsulator. So that is our choice format. But if we try to play it right now, our novel controller isn't going to know how to handle it. So we need to tell it how to handle it, and in order to do that, we need to know how to do it ourselves. So this is a normal line right here. This is what the controller expects to see, but now it thinks someone named Choice is asking something. So we want Choice to be a keyword. If a line starts with choice, then it's going to pass control of the line to the choice handler and gather all of the encapsulated information, and then perform the appropriate operation. Now that sounds easy enough, and believe it or not, it really is. Just follow my lead, because we're going to get started right now. Everything will be done in our novel controller, and it's not that much to do, so let's head into our handle chapter function. And when next is called, it automatically interprets the line and handles it like normal. We should only do that if it's not a choice line. But we also need something else. The chapter progress is incremented by 1 after each line, because each line is only one line long. However, a choice encapsulates many lines into a single operation, so we'll need access to the chapter file progress integer so we can increment it by a value much larger than 1 after each choice is given. That's the progress integer right here, folks. So let's turn that into a public integer called chapter progress. You can hide it in your inspector if you don't want it visible from the editor, which is what I'm doing right here. Make sure we update that name now. And once next is called, we should cache the current line into a string variable so we can analyze it and pass the appropriate control depending on what it is. Since choice is our keyword, if the line starts with choice, then we know it's a choice line, and we should handle it with special care. Otherwise, it's a normal line, and we handle it as we've been doing. So go ahead and copy all of that, or cut it, and then paste it into the else field. So that will be executed only if the line is not a choice initiator. But if this line is a choice, then we want to pass control to a choice manager. This will be a simple coroutine to handle the choice and action preceding it. I'll give it a parameter for the line as a string. So back above, if the current line is a choice initiator, then we yield for the duration of that management coroutine. Now we need to define what takes place in this coroutine. Since we already know this is a choice, we don't need the keyword anymore. All we need is the title inside of the quotation marks. So we can split the line by quotes to isolate the title and cache it for the choice menu's header. It'll be at index 1 since our keyword will be the first element in the array. Next, we need to collect all of the choices as well as their preceding actions into lists. These lists will be used to retrieve elements by the index of the last choice made on the choice screen. That's what will give us the correct action depending on what choice we made. So within the encapsulators, we have a choice in quotes, followed by the action that must precede it. We need to gather every option in the choice, so let's make a control boolean, and as long as that's true, we're going to loop. Just to be on the safe side, let's go ahead and yield so we don't risk a crash. Next, we need to increment the chapter progress by 1 to bypass the header line. Increment by 1 before the loop to bypass the initial encapsulation symbol as well. I changed choice to line so I can reuse it here. Now let's assign the line as the current entry in the loaded data. Looping like this will allow us to move through the choice menu, collecting each line as we need it. If you didn't increment before the loop, make sure we bypass the initial encapsulator. Next, we should remove the tab characters from the line. They're present for readability in the editor, but they have no place in the actual data. And a tab character is represented as a /t symbol. However, when we load the lines, the tab characters aren't loaded. Instead, they're replaced with 4 spaces per tab. So we aren't removing tabs, we're removing quad spaces from these entries. Quickly remove them with the string.replace function, replacing them with an empty string to get rid of them. Now we should have true line data that we can work with. And we should run this loop until we reach the ending encapsulator, which is the closing squiggly bracket. If we hit the end, then set the control boolean to false to exit the loop. Now, if this is not the end, then we're on a choice, so we can add the current line to our choices list. Again, since I used quotes around mine, I need to split by the quotes and take the second element in the returned array. Then I'll gather the associated action into the actions list as the next line. But I also need to remove the quad spaces in this line. Then increment chapter progress again, and that will collect all of our choices and actions throughout this loop. So if I've collected a number of choices, then I want to display the choice screen. Otherwise, I probably typed it out wrong in the chapter file, and I should probably send myself a warning. I'll do this using debug.log and just say that there was a problem with my choice operation. And to show the choice screen, we simply call show. Use our title as the header, and pass in the list of choices turned into an array. And you've probably noticed my monodevelop isn't auto-completing anything. It's pretty annoying, but I bet that is a good indication that I've mistyped something somewhere, and it's just causing an issue. If something like this happens to you, go ahead and save, pop back into Unity, and look at the console. Chances are it'll show you an error in your code. Going back in and fixing it will likely resolve the issue. In my case, after renaming progress to chapter progress, I never updated the references in red here, so that was messing up monodevelop for me, and after I fix that, we should be good to go. Yep, see how it's now offering suggestions? Alright, so we are good now. Great. Next, we should wait until the choice is made. You should remember how that's done from our choice screen episode. Very simple. And now that the choice is made, let's get the action of our choice, which is the action of the list at the index of the choice we made. And an action is just a normal line or command, so we can handle it like a normal line, with our handle line function. And while the line is being handled, just yield. And to end it all off, we increment the chapter progress by 1 to bypass the ending encapsulator. So that should now allow us to use choices directly within our chapter file instead of having to code out every one. Excuse me. Instead of every one of them. That was odd. So if the line starts with the keyword choice, it's treated as a choice, otherwise we handle it as a normal line. That allows us now to run the chapter file and use dialogue as well as conditional dialogue depending on what choice we make. So let's go ahead and try this out in Unity. You can see our dialogue is playing, leading up to the choice. Here it comes. There we go. Our chapter file is bringing up the choice. And we have our two choices. Great. So according to the chapter file, the choice is given for if I've turned off my feed or not. If I say yes, then she's going to get annoyed and just tell me to follow her. And then the rest of the chapter will continue as normal. So there we go, the proper response is given. And now the choice section ends and she should tell me we need to go to the captain. And there we go, nice. But if I say no, then I should get a totally different response from her as she calls me a liar. Yep, see there? So we know our choices are working. That's great. Awesome. As the chapter continues, it continues after the encapsulator. But let's go beyond adding simple conditional dialogue and see how we can make story branches or scene links using our single action. I'll add another choice that'll strictly be for additional dialogue, while my first two options will instead branch to different scenes. To do this, I'll make my action a command called load, which will load a new chapter file and start a new scene in the story. My naming convention is story A1 for story path A, branch 1. And my second option will open story path B, branch 1. Using these commands, we'll stop this chapter in its tracks and open another where the story will continue depending on our choice. But let me go ahead and start fresh with a choice that'll actually affect the flow of the story. Let's say that the plot of our story is this beautiful jewel right here. The world is about to explode, and the only way to stop it is to tickle an ugly monkey's face. Obviously, our choice of tickle or not will have drastically different results, so we can load two separate chapter files from the choices. This creates a story branch, and I just have to make the chapter files that'll be loaded by each choice and give it something unique to show the effect on our story. So I'm going to open these chapter files in Atom, or create them if they don't exist yet, and then just put in some narration saying that the world blew up or the monkey was pleased. So that was the wrong one. I need path A and path B. Right there. Alright, so these I had already made, so let me just clear out and put some different dialogue in here. They'll say that the world exploded for some strange reason. Actually, that's the wrong one. Path B should say that the world exploded, since that's what I put in my choice. But file A should say that the monkey is happy and all is well. There we go, we have our story branches. Very simple branches, mind you, just one line. But right now, load is an unknown command, so we need to enter the Novel controller, or whatever script has your chapter file commands, and add load to the case. Let's make a brand new case, add load in there. And then we will call a command of command load. And we'll pass in data 1, since that's going to be the data. And don't forget to break. Add the command to load is a simple one-liner. So let's make our void right here. Pass in that string data, which is actually our chapter name. And then we call the load chapter file command we created a long while back, passing in the file parameter. If you're using an external script, you can of course reference the Novel controller through its static instance. To get chapters to start automatically instead of waiting for your initial user input, you can add the next command directly after a chapter is loaded. That way the new chapter begins immediately. But we inevitably run into a problem when you try to run this in Unity. Everything works terrifically, even the choice menu, but our choices seem to have no effect. At least for me, since my leaked chapter file only contains one line. If you have several lines in the linked chapter file, you may notice that the first line is skipped. This is actually a simple fix, and it's only because of a specific load function we're using. You see that chapter progress is reset to 0 when a new chapter begins. That should take us to the first line of the new chapter, but we're always going right to the second, and since I only have one line, it ends the chapter for me. This is because the chapter coroutine is stopped, but the choice menu still continues to the end. It has no more logic after the choice other than the progress increment right here. And because load starts a new chapter loop, this increment is actually called after the progress is reset to 0. So let's remove that and move it to a more appropriate location. So let's make it come after the choice in the chapter loop. That way, it's the coroutine specific. Now if we run our chapter file with the choice menu inside, and load different story branches depending on our choices, we will see our story start to develop and move in different paths. Let's say, of course. So this is an idea of what you guys can do to achieve dynamic stories. Now I have to say this right now, and I'm sure it's obvious to most of you, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. The best way to create your visual novel and make it function is to use both a combination of chapter files as well as scripting. Chapter files should focus on dialogue and any form of dialogue-related event. But scripting should handle any other form of event. You shouldn't plan on having every possible event coded for operation in a chapter file. You can do that, it'll take a long time, and it's really unnecessary and a bit counterproductive when we get right down to it. So a combination of both is better. To make the two work together, if you use different scripts for handling specific chapters, you can control events and condition-based dynamic additions to the scene you're working on. This is a whole lot easier and quicker than making the same conditions within your chapter files. The only problem may be for those of you who don't really know how to code. You should have learned a lot from the episodes in this series. We've covered a lot of scripting approaches from basic to semi-advanced, and I try to explain everything as well as I can so everyone can understand and learn as we go along. But still, coding may be what you would like to avoid through chapter scripting, in which case you have a lot you can do right now, but you've also got a lot that you can't. It's unfortunate, but that is how it works. Refer to the chapter command videos for help on making more commands in your files. Now, I say that to say this. We are done with chapter files. We're finished with them. I won't be coming back to make any more additions to these chapter files. We are now on episode 24, and it's about time for me to start bringing the series to a close. We have a few more items to discuss, so next on the agenda is saving and loading progress. Then we'll link the two by making our main menu. Once that's over with, we're going to wrap up the series with a few more necessities and export a working project. Mind you, once the series is complete, there will be some extra episodes I release later that cover a few requested topics by people that I've yet to make videos on. Anyway, don't forget to add the stuff we made today in your command file so you never forget the format of this stuff. And before I forget, I better do that right now. So I will see you guys next time.